Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. I got another project today. Actually really excited for this one. Going to be working on the 91 Foxbody. A little backstory. I've had this car for 25 years. I think I bought this in 99 or 2000. So I've had this car for a long time. And it's always, from the factory, it's had automatic in it. I want to convert it to a 6-speed today. So we're going to get into that. But there's a lot that goes into that. So if any of you have ever done this before, you kind of know what it's all about. But I got the thing up on jack stands right now. And if you caught it in my last video, I didn't finish up my interior on there. I had put in some Dakota Digital a gauge cluster in there. And I didn't wrap up all my interior, and that was for a reason. Well, just because we got to get to that shifter's got to come out. So we'll get into that too in a little bit here. But talk to the folks over at Silver Sport Transmissions, and I got a whole kit here. Got my Tremec T56 6-speed right there, and a whole bunch of boxes and goodies and stuff. Got a bell housing sitting there. All kinds of good stuff that we're going to get into here, and going to go through and kind of show you what it takes to do this. I know I'm not the first one to do this swap. That there's other ones out there, but just figured if anyone comes across my channel and sees it, hey, they can maybe learn something here. So, but we're gonna get into it here. We've got some things done already. I got the oil drain in the transmission. You can kind of see, like I said, I had the interior part for the gauge cluster, and most of that down here, because the pedal box is all gonna get changed up down here. And the shifter's got to come out. So I had to take the center console out, seats are out. Carpet's probably going to have to come up, I think, just to get to that shifter. I'm not 100% sure yet. I could also maybe cut that open a little bit. I don't want to cut it any more than I have to, but we'll see what happens there. But for the most part, everything is kind of somewhat tore apart right now. But I think the first thing I want to get into is I want to start taking, I think the easy part is probably going to be just getting the transmission out and maybe getting the new one in. The pedal box is probably going to be a pain in the ass, putting in the clutch pedal and all that stuff, just because there's a lot of wiring and stuff shoved up in there from over the years. And, you know, being an automatic, there's that space in there where they just more wiring and stuff got put into, but now there's got to be a pedal there. So that might be the tricky part, but I'm going to get started with at least tearing the transmission out. That's why I got the transmission drained, just so it's not coming out. I'm going to get the drive shaft off, the exhaust out, transmission out. This one also has a tranny cooler up front. That can come out. So that'll be kind of nice to get that out of there. But yeah, let's get started, guys. We'll get underneath this thing and start tearing stuff apart. All right, we'll get the exhaust pulled down here. It'd be nice if I had a lift in here. Maybe you guys could see a little bit easier and be easier to work on, but we'll get the drive shaft out, the exhaust down, then we can get to more of the bones of it here, but go into a time lapse here and see how this goes. Okay, so getting the shifter cable disconnected here. I got the 2 bolts that hold that in, and then that just pops off the floor shifter. And I got it disconnected from the side of the transmission where the shift lever bolts to there. And kind kind of see. It's kind of up inside there right now, but whoops, right there. This bracket here just bolts to the back of the transmission with 2 bolts. So I'm going to pull it out, trying to get it to pull out here, but the factory's got one little rivet there I got to grind off, and then this cable will come out of here. Either that or I cut this bracket in half or whatever, but I'll just grind that rivet loose. This AOD is a Lentec automotive transmission. They're out of Canada, and it's a street terminator, I believe, is what I bought. It's supposed to be capable of about 700 horsepower. So this was kind of the stock transmission is sitting underneath that bench over there. But this is an upgraded one years ago. So this one actually has a lockout for the overdrive. So that's what this wire here is for. That just powers a solenoid that shuts off the overdrive inside of it. And then I have my temp sender wire here that connects to that right there in the pan. So I got that disconnected. My speedometer is pulled out. The speedo gear is right there, and this is the wires for it. That'll actually get swapped over to the new transmission. But I'm gonna get that ground off, get that out of the way, and then we'll move on upstream further. You know, I don't remember this thing being such a pain in the butt to work on, but it's kind of been fighting me here. So I've got my starter down or loose. I got my transmission cooler lines out of the way or taken out. Mine I actually had running through the radiator and then to the cooler and then back. So I had 3 lines to take loose. Got those out of the way. Let's see. I got my transmission kickdown cable. We won't need that anymore, so that runs up to the throttle. That's laying over here on the floor. So got that off, and just getting ready to pull the cooler out of here because it was up front here, and I'm not going to need this either. I'm sure I'll reuse this somewhere else. It's a good cooler. It's a pretty heavy-duty transmission cooler or oil cooler. And we'll just get it out of the way. Reducing weight. One last thing for heat up front. Wow. See what I mean? Just kind of fighting me. I'll have to grab a different tool here. The bumper brace is kind of in my way to crack this thing loose. So I need a little something shorter. This was actually mounted. I have 2 braces. You'll see it when it comes out. Spanning across the condenser up front here. Conveniently, the condenser has holes kind of drilled on each end on the brackets on the ends of it. There's holes drilled through there, and you can use those as mounting points. Not that they intended that for that, but sure works nice for that. So get it out here and down. It should come right out of here. There we go. See, just a couple braces, brackets going across there, and out she is. So. All right, now we can move on to getting the torque converter bolts out and cross member loose, and also just getting rid of the bell housing bolts, and then we should be able to pull that tranny down. All right, I got everything disconnected. Get the pan out of the way there. I got all the bolts loose on the bell housing. Cross member bolts are loose, just basically hanging here by the dowel pins and the cross member. So we'll get the jack under it, and we should be able to get this thing down. This thing's centered a little bit. Get the weight off the cross member. Pop that down. There we go. The cross member we will not be reusing, because they sent the Stifler's one along. So okay. Now we should be able to pry it back a little bit. And where was my pry bar? Okay. There you go. Let it down a smidge, if I can, without going too far. I think that's good there. Little wiggle. And I think she's out. Yep, we can come down with it. Dipstick was out a while ago, so I'm not worried about that. And should have enough room to clear the bottom of the car. All right. Oh, I better check my wiring on the other side there. Yep. It was all disconnected. I'm just making sure it's not catching it on the way down or something. And don't know if it'll slide out here. Oh, I bet it will. It ain't gonna come easy, but we'll get her out. Oops, kicking everything down here. And let's see. Just a little bit lower. Oh, she's all the way down there. Okay. Yep. We're just should be able to clear here. Just enough room, I think. Oh, come on. Okay. Oops, she's gonna slide off the end of the jack here any second. And starting to slide. Okay, well, we're gonna set it down then. Oh, don't do that. Making a mess now. Well, she's down. Let's get her on the ground then. Okay, she's down. That didn't go ideally the way I wanted it to, but we got her down. All right, last thing to kind of come out down here is the flex plate and the spacer plate between the block and the bell housing. So we're gonna buzz them off the impact. So plug your ears if you're wearing earbuds. This could be loud. T56. Had been hitting there. I don't know why. Sorry for the compressor noise there. Apparently my flex plate had been rubbing on here. I don't know what the deal is there, but that isn't good. I wore right through that thing. I guess I don't remember it making noise or not, but that's kind of weird that it only rubbed right there. I don't know if it got smashed at some point. You can see it's kind of, there's a chunk of aluminum right there caked on. So I don't know what the deal is, but all this is getting replaced, so it's so weird that it's up that high. And you know, this is raised right here. None of that was hit, but right here was hit. So I don't know if something fell in there. Just that part of it was bowed out or something. That's really weird, huh? Well, that's something I guess I didn't know. That was new to me. So we'll kind of get this cleaned up here. With all this out, I'm going to try and get some paint or Pour 15 or something on the floor pan here. It's in pretty good shape, but I'm going to clean all any grease or dirt up on here and probably go to about the mufflers here. There's kind of this is where the floor pan kind of ends here in one spot. So I'm going to probably do all that all the way up to about this edge here and get this all kind of nice and painted while I'm down here, while this is all out. So, but I think for the most part that's going to do it down here. So we'll get to the top side, see what's going on up there. All right, I'm going to turn my attention to the interior now. I've got a lot of the dash tore apart here. As you can see, I want to get this removed because we don't need this anymore. Also, this plate here that this is all bolted to comes out of here. That's where the shifter is going to be. It looks like just 4 bolts hold it down, and then this whole assembly can kind of come out of here. There is this cable here that kind of mounts. I already have it disconnected, but it mounts right here on the side where that cotter pin is. And what that's for is basically it won't let you shift it unless the key is turned. And so I had disconnected that. I want to remove that totally out of the dash if I can. It kind of comes way up here, and I either have to take this bezel back off, which I don't really want to do now that I got it all back together, or I have to lower the steering column. Well, I have to go in there and redo that pedal box anyways to put that third pedal in there for the clutch. So I might have to drop all that anyway to get up in there. And if I do, I'm going to try and disconnect that, but that just kind of loops back around down here and just helps with letting you unlock this thing. Once the key is, once the key is turned, then you can shift it. If I can't, I can easily just shove it, the end up underneath the dash there, and you'll never see it. But if I can, I want to remove it, just one less thing under the dash there. So I'm going to get this tore off here, and I think that's going to be, for the most part, everything we need to take out of here before we can kind of start going back together. But we'll get this off, see what it looks like. All right, went and took some acetone and a rag and wiped this whole tunnel down, the whole floor pan underneath here. This was always very clean and really no rust at all on this car. But fair amount of oil and just dirt and dust and everything collected over the years. Got it wiped down pretty good. I'm going to take a Scotch-Brite pad now, a red one, and just kind of rough up the surface here as best as possible in preparation for, the paint. Give it the best chance of adhering as possible. But turned out pretty good. I'm happy with it. I'm going to put some wire loom on these wires. I might have to cut these connectors off. I'm not sure yet. But I think right here there's a nice body seam. Then I'm going to put tape on this side here and then paint from here back. And then I'm going to at least go to here, right before the mufflers. I think I'm going to try and get up underneath here. It's hard to get in here without taking the rest of the exhaust out to get in here and do all this. But I wiped it down best I could back here. And I might end up painting the rest of this later in a different project. But for the most part, I got all the way from the pinch welds out here on each side wiped down the best I can. So I'll go and basically tape off from the pinch weld out, tape all that off, and then from pinch weld to pinch weld, just spray this. We'll go black. I think I'm going to do that same bed liner, spray-on bed liner that I had for the Ranger there. The fuel tank on it, the fuel cell. That turned out pretty nice, so I'll spray all that. All right, got suited up here to crawl underneath this thing and do some spraying. So I got some of it taped off. I got my tarp down, kind of to help with cleaning up the mess, because there's going to be a bunch of overspray that falls down. But basically just don't want to get it on the sides of the car underneath. And then I do have it taped up underneath on the firewall. I don't want to get it on the back of the engine or up higher up on there, on the tunnel there. So just got it taped off on both sides, and we'll crawl underneath there and start doing some spraying here. All right, paint is all wrapped up. Paint actually laid down real nice. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. And hopefully going forward here, this doesn't make it too dark under here, but try and keep some lights under here so you can see what's going on. But you can see kind of where I started and stopped up front here. And yeah, I think it's looking great. So I'm happy with that. So we can get moved on to the next part of the build here. I think what I'm going to do is get this bell housing figured out here, because we'll have to get the flywheel on here. We won't final install it just yet, but we've got to get the flywheel on here so we can check the bell housing run out. We may have to get different pins here basically what we're doing is we want to get the input shaft of the transmission dead center of the crankshaft here. So if it's off to one side, it's going to put wear that input shaft out or wreck parts on the inside of the transmission. So we want to make sure we're dead center when we go together. So we got to get the flywheel on here, the bell housing on here, and then we measure the hole in the center of the bell housing, which will center the transmission. So like I said, we may have to put different centering pins or dowel pins here. But before I forget, I want to get this pilot bearing in here. So I'm going to find that in the bunch of parts here, and get that pilot bearing put in here. Otherwise, I know I'm going to forget that, and then it's going to just have to come all back apart again. So I've got most of the parts unboxed here. This is all kind of the stuff they send along with it. This plate here is actually for measuring the center ring plate. This is actually going to go on the back of the bell housing here, and then I'm going to measure here because it's just because it's not with the T56. I think it's just a different bell housing and stuff. So you can't measure the run out of this circle here because it's got openings here. So they send along this plate they got to use, and then this is going to center where we actually do the measuring off the flywheel. But as you can see, you got a rear cross member. This is the throw-up bearing, a hydraulic throw-up clot bearing, and then just a bunch of bolts and parts and shifter handle, cross transmission mount. It's got a hump kit here for the inside. That's got to change a little bit where the tunnel is, so we'll get to that. Bunch of wiring and sensors and stuff like that. Obviously you can see the bell housing. There's also a kind of a control module that has to be wired up at some point, and this is basically for the reverse lockout. So if at highway speeds you don't accidentally put it in reverse and blow everything to smithereens. So that's what this is for. It's basically just controls the solenoid on the side of the transmission, but we'll get that figured out. So a lot of nice stuff here, and just a matter of doing it. But I think this is my pilot bearing right here, so we'll get that checked out, make sure it fits on the front of the transmission, on the input shaft, and make sure it fits in the back of the crank okay, and then we can drive that in. So do that next. All right, there it is in all its glory, the mighty T56. Just checking the pilot bearing, make sure it slides on there okay. There should be just a slight bit of resistance to go on there, so, but yeah, it feels fine. And we'll check the then basically check down here, make sure that seems to fit okay. There should be some interference fit because it's got to be it's press fit, so you have a few thousandths there, but that should fit fine. I just got to grab a socket and then I'll tap that in quick. One thing too, being mine was an automatic, you may have some rust built up inside the crank. So you might want to take some, just a Scotch-Brite pad or some emery cloth or something and kind of clean that up, make sure there's not a bunch of rust in there that's going to keep this from going all the way in. But just got to drive this all the way in so it's flush with the crank. This should be good to go. Just make sure it's going in square. There we go. She's tight all the way around it, and you can hear it when it bottoms out too. So, and maybe just give it a little spin there too, just to double check. This has got a kind of needle bearings in there, so it's not a bushing, it's an actual bearing. But should be good to go. Now we can kind of get the flywheel put up there and figure out if our bell housing is centered. Here's the McLeod flywheel that they sent along. This flywheel actually comes with 2 weights, some dowel pins here. They actually also send along some flywheel bolts from ARP, so that's nice that they're upgraded to ARP bolts. But if you don't know, the Ford 302 engine spanned many years, from like the 60s all the way up to the 90s. So they had 2 different weighted flywheels and balancers on the engine, dampeners up front. So it's nice that McLeod actually sends 2 different weights with. One's a 50 ounce, one's a 28 ounce. On the 91, if it's stock engine, that's going to have a 50 weight or 50 ounce weight on it. Mine being I have a different engine in there, that's a 347. That was a 28 ounce engine when they built it. So I have to put the smaller one on here, but that'll get bolted on the backside here. right here. So we'll just use some Loctite, probably some red Loctite, so that thing doesn't fly off there. It stays on there. We'll get that bolted on. And then these dowel pins are going to be for your clutch, basically. So I believe they're going to be pressed in right here. There's another one here, and looks like right here is the other one. So that basically just kind of puts the clutch on here, centers it, and then you bolt it down. So I'm pretty sure that's what those are, but that's made for the Ford engine or for this flywheel here. So we'll get that screwed on there, that weight, and we'll get it on the car next. All right, I wanted to show you this. This is a dowel pin. You can see it's got kind of a shoulder to it. The narrower, the top part there, has to go up, and then the bottom part is the part that you actually drive into the flywheel here. I don't know if you can see this. Let me get it out of the box a little bit. But so you can see that's got to stick up like that. Just a word of advice: make sure that that shoulder that gets driven in there is in all the way. If for some reason that shoulder is up too high, that clutch won't sit flat on the flywheel. So if you can see on this one, I've got it recessed just a little bit. It's basically bottomed out inside there, but the shoulder isn't sticking up. I got the other side here too. So it's just below the surface of the flywheel. So for some reason that's sticking up too high. That clutch, once you bolt it on, probably won't sit flat all the way, so you could have issues there. So make sure they're driven all the way in there, and you can kind of hear when it bottoms out in there, but you don't want that shoulder sticking up. Before I put the spacer plate and flywheel up here, I decided that I was going to run a thread chaser through these bolt holes here for the flywheel on the crank. Sometimes, especially if you're taking an old one out, I guess, or a flywheel or flex plate, you'll have some Loctite or just debris or something in here. So you want to make sure that when you go to torque the new bolts, that they're not catching on any of that old dried up Loctite in there or anything else, any other debris that might be in there. So wouldn't hurt to run a thread chaser or a tap through those bolt holes just to clean them up. On my crank, I don't know if it's the same way on all of them, but I see that the hole is a through hole, so it actually goes all the way through. It doesn't deadhead in here, and so just be aware of that, because if you're running a tap through there, you don't want to run the tap into something on the inside, or push that debris that you're cleaning out into the engine, I guess, depending on how yours might be. So just be aware of that. So I kind of went maybe 3/4 of the way, because it doesn't need to be that deep anyway. The bolt holes or the bolts aren't going to go that far in, but just be aware of that. And then the other thing is that if you don't have any sealant, whether it's thread lock or some other sealant around those threads, you could have oil leaking out of those bolt holes. So just be aware of that. Pay attention to that when you're putting yours on. But we'll get this flex plate on here. As you can see, this has got to go on before I put my flywheel on. And let's see, I got this turned around, but this should be like that. And then we can get the flywheel bolted up. And I'll make sure this is a QuickTime bell housing spacer plate here that came with the bell housing. But you want to make sure that everything clears here. You want to make sure this is flat, so the flywheel is not rubbing on it. We'll test the flywheel here. It shouldn't hit anything. The flywheel is only going to go on one way, because the bolt holes only line up one way, so pay attention to that. If you spin it, one hole might line up, but the other ones don't. You keep spinning it until they all line up. So that should be where mine is. The little sticker is actually towards the top there. Not necessarily going to be the same way on yours, but and we're not torquing it down right now. We're just getting it on here so we can put the bell housing on here and check for run out. Make sure it's all centered. So we just need to get this on here so it's not moving around on us. That's a nice socket. Snug that up a little bit. And I'm kind of I'm going to push this against the block here and basically checking behind the back side of the flywheel and the plate here just to make sure that there's no rubbing. It looks pretty flat. I got maybe 1/8 of an inch, 3/16, 1/4 of an inch there, a gap, so we should be good there. That shouldn't spin and hit anything. And once the bell housing is all tightened down, that should be give us even more gaps. So we're looking good there. Next, we'll get the bell housing on here and check that. So you can see I've got the bell housing bolted up here, but one quick note before you put the bell housing up here, I suppose you could do it with the bell housing too, because you can kind of see down in here, but is to test your starter. Not necessarily spin it over, but just see to make sure that when you have it bolted up or once you kind of put it in place, that it's going to have good teeth engagement with the flywheel to make sure that it's not going to hit or stick or anything like that, or that something's off. So just a quick test that out, and before actually putting this on, then you can see it a little better without the bell housing on. But so next, we're gonna, now that this is bolted up, what they want you to do is kind of tighten wherever the dowel pins are, tighten those bolts up first, or make sure they're tight next to the dowel pins, and then kind of tighten up the rest of them. So there's 6 total for me up against the engine there. So now that they're torqued down, then I can put this plate on that they send with for the alignment. I just there's a couple of dowel pins here on the plate that line up with the dowel pins that actually are on the transmission too. But so we just put that on there, and then we'll get that bolted up. There's 4 holes here, but the 4th one doesn't actually go to anything. There's kind of a hole there in the bell housing, so it's just a matter of getting these other 3 tight and kind of torque down or snug down. And there's a top to it. It says top. And it's kind of hard to, I guess, mess it up because of the way those dowel pins are on this plate. You almost can't put it upside down, because otherwise it wouldn't be centered with the crank. But get this plate put on here, and then we'll put our dial indicator on here. I already kind of tested it a little bit, so I got it set up to fit there. So basically we want this dial indicator to be perpendicular to the face of this hole opening, and it's going to give you your best reading. So I have it set up, so it should make contact all the way around. We'll have to spin it to double check that, but basically get it in a spot here, make sure there's enough travel on it so it doesn't bottom out one way or the other. And I should be, well, I'm just going to slide it in here a little bit more. There, that's pretty much right in the middle there. And then I'll get my dial indicator here zeroed out. Okay, I'm actually going to make I want you to make a little mark, kind of where you started. And then you're going to end up having to kind of rotate it around. It's ideally to have another person help you out and spin the motor over, so you can watch it here while it spin the motor, someone spins the motor off the crank or off the front pulley. With the bell housing on, you can't exactly grab the flywheel and spin it. unless you got some other fancy tool that maybe helps you do that. But you do not want to use a starter to bump this over. That'll probably wreck your dial indicator and do all kinds of things. So you want to crank it over by hand or spin it over by hand and go from there. But what I'll probably do is I can kind of use the video here if I have to rewatch it and check my dial indicator and see how it's running. But I'll just move it little at a time and then I can kind of see how it's going. So I just can't spin it as fast, but and with the spark plugs in, I can't exactly spin it over fast anyway, so just to take my time here, spin it over. So far, we're staying right at 0, which is a good thing. The maximum of run out that you want is 5 thousandths, which they explain in the instructions. And if we're at half a thousandths right now, that's doing pretty good. You want to go 360 all the way around. Yep. So far, so good. Okay, we kind of went the other way there just a little bit. We're still within about 1 thousandths and a half. Hopefully we don't have to get offset dowel pins. Just trying to see here. And what they say to do is wherever you have your most positive offset basically, or wherever it shows your most positive number here, you're supposed to mark it there. And then when you go to the opposite side and it's the most negative, that is basically your run out that you have. So if you know it's really far to one side, you kind of zero the dial indicator there and then go to the other side. And that basically tells you your total run out. And whatever your run out is, you divide that by 2, and that's basically the offset you want, because you don't want to, let's say it's 20 thousandths one way down, left here or something, 20 thousandths that way. You don't go 20 thousandths the other way. You have to split the middle, basically. So far, looks like we're doing pretty good. Just a little time here. Most I've seen is about 2 thousandths that we're out around here. And when you come back to your initial mark, wherever, that's why I kind of tell you wherever you started, where I have my mark there, that should be 0 again. If it's not 0 again, then your dial indicator most likely moved on you, and you have to redo that. And make sure make sure that you're actually getting an accurate reading. So I'm going to do this a couple times here just to make sure everything is looking good. But I think so far initial readings is showing that it's actually within spec. But yeah, for some reason your readings keep changing. You know, either this is loose or maybe it's not in the right position. So double check that stuff. But so far it looks like I'm only off about 2 thousandths, which is within spec, which is perfect. Then I don't have to get offset dowel pins for the bell housing. Right, I've double and basically triple checked going around here. I'm still within that 2 thousandths of an inch. You might be able to, I don't know if you can read my numbers on here, but basically just took a Sharpie, and as I went around, I wrote down what it was. You're gonna have to, or if you want, you don't have to, but what they want you to do is take measurements like this, and then they have paperwork to send back in for warranty. So if you ever have issues with the transmission and it's still under warranty, they're going to want to see what your run out numbers are. So document that, take pictures or whatever you got to do, but they basically have paperwork. I think either you can send it in or do it online and send it in, and that way they have it. So, you know, a year from now or whatever, or 6 months from now, if you have issues, they have all those measurements, can tell if it's something you did or just something in the transmission. Okay, next I'm going to take the plate off here, get the bell housing down. I'm going to take the flywheel, get all the bolts installed, get those torqued down. You know, when you torque these down with the ARP, they send them some lubricant they send with, and that's to go under the bottom side of the head, so it spins freely on the flywheel. And then also they want you to use Loctite on the threads. So Loctite on the threads, but on the bottom of the head, you put a little grease on it, so you get the correct torque specs. And I gotta double check what the torque specs are on here. They're probably 65 or 85 foot-pounds or something like that. But we'll get those torqued down. Once the flywheel is installed or torqued down, then I can get the clutch put on here, and then I can get the bell housing put back on, and then I could probably put the starter back in. And before I put the transmission in here, I'll probably go to the top and get the hump kit put in and get all that taken care of in case I need to do any cutting of the floor. At least the transmission's not in the way. And I don't know if I'm gonna get the transmission in here before I do some of the wiring. I might mock it up, I guess, and see where all my wiring is gonna come out. I don't know how much I'm gonna have to tap into or cut or splice or whatever. But anyway, we'll go on to that next step here and get all this stuff installed permanently, and then probably go inside and do that hump kit, get that taken care of. So flywheel's torqued and installed. One thing too is before you put the clutch on, we want to make sure this flywheel surface is completely dry and clean. So a lot of times you take brake clean, wipe it off. You don't want oil and grease on there. You don't want your fingerprints on there. Basically what that can do is, it's oil. So if that oil gets hot, it can create a hot spot and kind of harden certain spots on the flywheel, kind of like a brake rotor. Same thing as brake rotor. If you get grease or fingerprints kind of on it, and that can create hard spots if it gets hot enough, and then you basically have a warped, or it won't work as well. So you'll notice the hard spots in it. So just wipe all your fingerprints off there, and don't use a clean rag. Don't use a greasy rag, or it's going to just smear it. So do this twice, make sure I got everything. And then we should be good to go there. One thing I noticed here is, I'll show you, this is the clutch disc. This is a single disc clutch. This is kind of a little bit of a hybrid. It's got more of a puck style on one side, and I forget the name of this style here, but for now I'll just call it diaphragm style. But it's kind of a hybrid, so one side's on the flywheel, one side's on the clutch plate, or on the pressure plate, sorry. And I'm a little surprised because typically these will say engine side, flywheel side, you know, pressure plate side on the disc so you know which way to turn it. For some reason, McLeod doesn't do that on here. And so just be aware of that you make sure you install it the right way. The only thing with like this one, you can't install it, well, I guess you can install it the wrong way, but it only will fit one way or the other. If you notice the hub, the spring hub here in the center, which kind of, it takes up some of the vibration and torsion, like when you're going through the gears and stuff, so it kind of softens the blow. That's what it's there for. But if you look, it sticks out more on one side than the other. So you have to be aware of that. Typically, from what I'm used to anyway, on actually a semi, I've done a lot of semi clutches, but they're a twin disc clutch. And a lot of times that hub will stick into the flywheel on the flywheel side, but the second disc will stick into the pressure plate on the other side. So basically, they'll have an intermediate plate here and then the other disc. So one will sit this way, one will sit this way. And because that hub sticks out, so it has to be able to fit. Well, if I take this hub and put it towards the flywheel on this one, it hits the bolts here. A lot of times that's why these bolts are so thin. The heads on them are so flat or thin, is so it doesn't hit this stuff. But this one, if I put it in that way, you'll have a gap between the disc and the flywheel, so it won't ever work. It would just grind the crap out of this stuff and wreck it instantly. So it only goes in this way, where the hub is facing the pressure plate. So just be aware of that when you're putting it in. The other thing too is I made sure that this slides onto the input shaft. So not that you put this and install it and everything, and then you go to stab the transmission and you're fighting and you're fighting and you're fighting and you can't figure it out. Well, maybe the splines are wrong or something like that. So always double check that. But so yeah, I'm surprised that this isn't labeled somehow, engine side or transmission side. Typically they are, but the only way it'll fit is go in this way. So we'll get that on there. Then we got our little alignment tool here. Get that slid all the way in so it's kind of hanging there. And then we can put our pressure plate up here. Oops. And there goes my light. Same thing with this too, the pressure plate side. Make sure that surface is clean. No oil on it, no grease. So get your brake clean out, get that clean. So I'll do that quick here. This kind of goes for, you know, when you put the flywheel on and this spacer plate and all that stuff, make sure all these surface areas are clean so you don't have dirt and debris in there. As far as the pressure plate goes, there's no position or clocking that you have to do necessarily. It should be balanced. So basically you just got to get your dowel pins lined up. So it's holding on there. Okay, where's the other one? Now being that the throwout bearing is not here, there's pressure on the plate, so you actually have to kind of suck it in. And I believe these get torqued to 25 foot-pounds. So we'll kind of get the bolts in here. We'll have to get some Loctite on them, same as flywheel bolts. I think that's working there. And then we'll leave this in the alignment tool until we actually tighten it down, and then everything should be tight, and then you should be able to pull this out. If for some reason this is really tough to get out, then it might be crooked in there. You might have to redo that, but. All right, clutch should be done. Next I can put the bell housing on. Before we put the bell housing on, where the dowel pins are here on the engine, make sure to put a little grease on there or something, some sort of oil or lubricant or something. Just helps so they don't corrode to the bell housing, and then it's harder to get them off. All right, so the next step here is the hump kit that goes in the tunnel here. This is a tunnel extension for the manual Fox bodies. The automatics are a little different, so you got to get this hump kit here. Basically what they want you to do is take this left rear bolt hole, take a screwdriver or something, get that lined up with the existing one on the tunnel, and kind of so you know where it's going to sit on there. So I basically have this on there, and I traced around it with my marker, with my Sharpie, just because I have this Dynamat on here. I'm going to have to cut some of this Dynamat away, kind of peel it back a little bit so I can get to the metal itself. So this is sitting in the right spot. It'll probably be fine for the most part because that Dynamat isn't that thick, but I want to peel it back and then get this in the right spot, and then I can always kind of fold it back up. So I'm hoping to save it, just kind of peel it back a little bit. So we'll see. Maybe I just cut it off and just put some new stuff on there or something. But otherwise, once that's on there, I'll probably rivet it on there. You can weld it on there if you want. I'm not going to go that far. I suppose some self-tappers would work too, but I'd rather have rivets sticking through the bottom than a self-tapper. So if you're ever working on underneath, you're not catching it, those screws sticking down. So we'll do that, and let's see. Once it's kind of in the spot. Once I get the Dynamat peeled back, and I find out where I'm going to put this, I actually have to trace the inside of this hole here on the hump kit down to the tunnel itself and open that up some more. So this will have to get cut open a little bit, just to make sure there's enough room for the shifter and everything in here. Once that's in place or kind of done, we can get it in here, put some seam sealer on there and get it riveted down. And then what we'll do is we'll test fit the transmission and then make sure that there's enough clearance up around here, and in case we have to cut a little bit more open. But once we test fit it and everything looks good there, then we should be done up here with this hump kit and kind of somewhat in the interior until we get to some of the wiring. But so we'll get that done next. I'll get this thing riveted on. Got all the Dynamat kind of cut away there. There is some insulation from the factory still on here. That should be fine. You can kind of go over the top of that if you want, or cut it out, but I'm going to leave that. But so I got that trimmed off, and you can kind of see I have the hole traced on the inside, which I got to cut out. So I got to cut that much out yet. So grab a saw here and try and get that cut out. So here's what it should look like, I guess, when it's all said and done. I got everything riveted on. Kind of got 4 on the side, 2 up in the front, kind of 1 in the middle here, and then another 4 on this side, rivets. But so basically this is the rubber boot that comes with the hump kit. So this sits on top like that, and then your shift lever will stick through there. The one thing that I don't really like about this is that there is a gap between the original floor and the new hump kit. So, you know, obviously there's nothing that really seals down here. The transmission is going to be pretty close to the bottom of the floor here. So, but there is a chance that you can get water or whatever, or stuff coming up through here, you know, while you're driving. So I don't know, I'd like to seal that off best I can. I don't know what I could do there. I think I have some foam that I might be able to put in all the way around here. Even once the transmission gets mocked up in here, maybe I can just put a whole piece that lays over the top of it, kind of shoves in all the way around, to somewhat seal that, and also just to keep the noise down so you don't get noise transferring through there, exhaust noise or, you know, heat or anything like that, just road noise. So I'll have to look and see if I have something that I can do there. Otherwise, I'm going to put a little bit of some more Dynamat kind of around the hump here. There again, just to kind of keep the noise down and try and seal it up best as possible. And then we can test fit the transmission and see how it sticks up through here. You know, there is a chance I still may need to trim some more off around the floor here, but I think for the most part, I went a little bit bigger than what the hump kit shows, maybe 1/4 of an inch bigger. But I think it turned out nice. All right, wanted to show you this real quick, but I'm kind of trying to mock up the transmission here. So you can see I've got the shift lever somewhat close here. I'll show you underneath here real quick, but it's almost easier maybe to take this shift lever, the top cover off here, that red piece, off just to get it in here, because you kind of have to go at somewhat of a steep angle just to get the input shaft in, because you got to get the transmission to go far enough forward for this to clear the hole here. Otherwise that shift lever is catching the bottom of the floor and won't let you go up high enough. But the other issue I'm kind of having right now is I can't get the tail to the passenger side. That's because of that right there, the ear sticking out where that tag is tied to. If I go, if I close the gap here and get far enough forward, that's probably going to clear the tunnel here. But right now it's at a pretty decent angle, kind of going down. So this clears back here, and then I'm trying to get the input shaft in here, but pretty soon I got to go into the splines, and that's going to have to be pretty straight there to go in. So either I have to bash that the tunnel in a little bit with a hammer, or cut that ear off. I think I'm going to cut that ear off. I don't know if that's going to void my warranty or not, but it's not used for anything. I don't know if it's just for a different application or a different front cover on these things. But that I'll show you when I pull it back out. But that ear is going to have to come off. That's going to give me a lot more clearance, and I should be able to get it in here a lot easier. And then down the road, if I have to pull it out, I just don't have to fight with it. So the other thing is, I suppose I could try is put the bell housing on the transmission, and then try and put everything up here at the same time. Maybe that would help too. But I still think that ear is going to catch the tunnel here. So I'm going to cut that off. And I bet it's going to go in here a lot easier. And I might even take the shift lever off there too, just so I can get it in there. All right, got it back out. So this is the ear that I want to cut off. If you look from the front here, it sticks out just enough where it's catching that firewall. So we'll cut that off best we can. And as far as I can tell, it doesn't get used for anything. So we should be able to just trim that off, and then it'll give us that much more clearance. On the other side, we got plenty of room. There's nothing really sticking up over here that we have issues with. So it's just that, and we'll get that trimmed, and hopefully it'll go in a lot easier. All right, I figured I'd show you this real quick, but this is what I pulled the shift lever off the top of the transmission. That's what it looks like inside. These are actually made to be reversible, so if you want to move it in a different position, you can put the shift lever forward or back. Mine will have to be in the back side like that. But they just have silicone instead of a gasket around here. So this will be a lot easier getting the transmission in and out. I'll have to see if I can actually get to all the bolts once this is up in there, if I have enough room around the opening in the tunnel to get the bolts in. It looked like I did when I had it in there. I might have to get it halfway up, install this, and then get it the rest of the way. But I think it'll be easier just going in. We'll see. But anyway, for now, I'll get this taped up so we don't have dirt falling in there. And with that ear cut off up here, it should go in a lot easier, but I figured I'd show you that real quick. All right, doing some more mocking up here. I got the transmission all the way bolted up and sitting in the transmission, sitting on the cross member. So it's fully hanging there the way it should be. But I will need to massage, or either I can beat it up here or cut more of this tunnel out because I got the bolts rubbing up there. You can kind of see that if I won't be able to get the shift lever back on the transmission here when it's fully installed. The front two bolts are underneath the floor pan here. Maybe if I cut that out, I'd be able to get in there with a wrench or something, but the bolt still wouldn't be able to, you wouldn't be able to put the bolt in to tighten it. You'd have to do it just before you put it all the way up in here. But so I might end up doing that once it's about 3/4 of the way up here, then I can put the shift lever on it and bolt it all up. But to the rear, there's plenty of room there. The shift lever is coming out where it should be. Once you put that rubber gasket on top here, it's centered right where it should be. So that's lined up good there. This transmission actually sits just a little bit cockeyed like that. So that's why this bolt here is kind of rubbing on the floor. This one, there's more room. So I don't have really anything to worry about there, but I still might just cut all that out underneath there. And I'll show you underneath here what's going on. A couple more issues down here. So it's all bolted up, sitting on the cross member here. Let me grab my light. But I'm running into an issue where it's rubbing right there on the cross member. The case is actually, I don't know why that is. As far as I know, the cross member here is sitting in the right position. It's all the way back. The bushings are all the way to the front. They give you some bushings. You can kind of move these around depending on your application. So the cross member can kind of slide forward or back if you need to, but all this is supposed to be all the way back, which it is. This rubber mount is basically centered so you can't have it in the wrong way. No matter which way you put it in, it's going to be sitting the same way. So I got that. It's kind of slid all the way forward, which is fine. But that's the only spot right there that's rubbing on the cross member. So I think I'll be able to massage the transmission, the casing there, and just notch a little bit off that edge versus trying to, you know, dent this or something like that. But so I got that rubbing, which is kind of unusual. I didn't think I'd run into that. The other thing is I'm running, you might be able to see, let me change this around here real quick. Oops. Go like this. All right. So I had cut the ear off on this side, kind of up. No, let me see. Go this way once. So I'd cut the ear off up here so it wasn't hitting the firewall. Now I got these kind of 4 tabs that stick out. Let me pull this tape off here. This is just this. As I spin you around, there's a little sensor right here. So they just gotta have it taped up. There. So, but you can see this one right here. I got it kind of already marked off with a Sharpie. That's up against the firewall. It's just rubbing it. So I'd only have to take maybe 1/4 of an inch off of it or something, but you can see all 4 of these kind of sticking out here. These are fine. There's a gap here, but it's just that top one that's up against there. So that's got to get cut down. I don't know if you'll be able to see here, but you can kind of see I have a little line drawn along the tape there, which I'm going to cut straight forward. And then just on the other side of that kind of hump, just to the left of my light, there's a line to the right of it. So I'm going to go just past that hump and then cut it across to the other side, and that should clear those bolts then. Either that or I can try and pound it up, but I don't know if I'll be able to, how much I'll be able to pound that lump up, because it's pretty strong there. So I'll probably just cut it out. It'll just be that much easier. As much as I don't like cutting the floor, it's just, I think the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak. So yeah, I got that tab there. I'll have to cut down. I'll have to cut the floor a little bit. And then this cross member hitting the transmission right there. So a few spots I'll have to massage. Otherwise, this side is all kinds of room. And I don't see really the bolt up there hitting anything. So we should be okay up there. You can kind of see my line there that I'm going to cut across to. And where that rivet is sticking through the floor, so I can cut up to about that far if I want to, but I'm not going to quite go that far. But otherwise, I think we're doing okay. We got room kind of everywhere else. But yeah, that's the way it should be sitting in the car. It's just a matter of a few things to massage to fit in here. So, all right, solved one issue, I guess. I won't have to cut anything off the back of the housing here and the cross member. I forgot that there's spacers that come with this rear cross member for the bushing. Either you can have one on, two on top like this of the cross member, or one on bottom, one on top, or none at all. It looks like I'm going to have to doing some measuring of the pinion angle versus the transmission. Looks like I either have to get this tail housing up a little bit, or adjust the rear axle back there and get that to change a little bit. But I don't have adjustable upper or lower control arms, so they're fixed. So basically I'm going to probably have to adjust this as much as I can up. So, but the problem there is going up, well, now I'm probably going to hit right there. So I might have to cut just a little bit more out of the tunnel just for that to work. So, but right now I have about 4 degrees down here, and on the pinion I've got about 1.5, something like that. So there's almost, they tell you not to go kind of more than 3 degrees difference between the two. So I'm pushing that mark right now. So I might have to try it. Either that, or I got to buy different control arms up on top or something to adjust the pinion angle on that rear axle. Future plans are I kind of want to change up the rear end. So I don't know if I want to stick money into doing that right now. So I might just get it best I can and try it and see what happens. See if I get a vibration or not. But yeah, putting these 2 spacers here anyway got me that space I needed between there. So now it's just a matter of kind of cutting the floor out a little bit and cutting off that one ear up here. So now that ear up here is even hitting more. So, but we'll get that we'll get that changed around or cut and massaged, and we'll be right back to you here. All right, I got the floor all modified. That should be good to go. I got my transmission ears cut off here and down here. This spot here, and yes, right here too. So that all clears the tunnel. Transmission should be ready to go back up inside. Next, what I want to do is set up the throwout bearing. So this is the McLeod hydraulic throwout bearing that comes with the kit. So this would be the side that goes up against the clutch fingers themselves, and then they got the other side. This is adjustable. So basically, you can see there's threads on here. This red part actually spins on here, so you can adjust the depth of it when you go to set this up. You got to pay attention to the instructions if you do this. A couple things. Some of these transmissions have a spacer plate here, so it'd be just a kind of a huge washer or something like that would go up against here, because you can even see down just behind this shaft here. There's a bolt hole right there. It looks like it's there for something. And chances are what that's for is either for that plate on some applications, or it's an indexing bolt. A lot of these throwout bearings, basically they can't spin on the input shaft, so they'll have a bolt that indexes them to keep them from spinning. And that helps with keeps the adjustment the way it's supposed to be and everything else. This one here from McLeod does not have that. They actually use kind of some O-rings on the inside, and it's a pretty tight, snug fit up on this shaft right here. This black part does not spin, just the shaft inside, so this stays stationary. But they don't run any type of, with this my application, there's no washer that goes back here. So it's basically just pushes on, and it's being such a tight, snug fit on this shaft here that it's basically indexing it. So they don't use that index bolt or pin that goes in here to keep this from spinning. It should be basically so tight on here that it won't spin. Now with the adjustment, you got to be careful on this one, because if you screw this and collapse this all the way tight, as thin as it can be, and slide it on, these bolts around here will actually hit the case here. But if you extend it out to where it should be, the threads actually bottom out up against this black shaft here. So I don't need that washer that goes in here once you go in there, but just make sure that nothing's rubbing here. It's bottomed out against there. It wouldn't wear into the case or anything like that. This is just the way this one is set up, but every throwout bearing is a little different. Every application is maybe a little different, transmission and whatnot. But what we got to do now is we got to adjust the free play. Basically, where the fingers touch here, you want a little bit of an air gap. You don't want them constantly rubbing on there. It'll make the throwout bearing wear out faster. So what we're going to do is basically, I got this slit on. Pretty snug fit. And I've already kind of measured this, but I'll show you how I did it. Basically, you want this flat surface here of the transmission goes right up against the bell housing, which is already installed. So I'm measuring from the face of this to the face of the throwout bearing, and I'm going to take that measurement. Then I'm going to go under the car. I'm going to take the measurement from the fingers on the clutch, and then go to the edge of the bell housing and take that measurement and see what my air gap would be. I mean, either that or you could constantly put the transmission in and out and actually mount it and see where you're at, but then you can't really spin this once you're in there, once it's all assembled. So you got to take the measurements before you go in there, and it's just going to be a one-shot deal then. So, but this is a very important thing to have to make sure you have this adjustment right. They basically want about an 1/8 inch air gap between there. There again, make sure what throwout bearing you're going with, because certain throwout bearings might want to actually contact and have no air gap, the fingers, because the throwout bearing itself maybe has a cushion built into it. So it's made to constantly rub. So, but this one here, according to McLeod, needs an air gap of roughly 1/8 of an inch. They say 100 thousandths to 150 thousandths. So that's basically right there at 1/8 of an inch. So what I did, you can use either a digital caliper, dial caliper, something to measure. This doesn't exactly have a flat face on it here where you can measure real close to here, just because of all these grooves and spaces in here. But what I did is I basically took a couple squares here, whoops, took a couple T's or squares, and I put one up against the flat surface here to go across where the bell housing would be, and then I take the other one and I actually go up and go perpendicular to the throwout bearing, and then I just basically I'm going to make sure that comes right flush to the edge there where the bell housing would be. So I'm going to set that like that, if you can see that. Basically measure it just like that. And then what we can do is we'll take this and we'll go down here, then turn the light on. Then all we have to do, once this is kind of locked down and set, then I can put that up against the bell housing there. And I don't know if you'll be able to see or not, but see if I can go at an angle. And then you can kind of see and measure your air gap here up against the fingers. You can maybe see I got about 1/8 of an inch there up against the fingers. You know, if you don't do it this way, you just basically, same thing there, is you put a straight edge across there, measure to the fingers, either with a digital caliper, dial caliper, tape measure, whatever, make your measurement and, you know, figure out what it is compared to this here. So basically just set it up like that, and then you can go across the face of the transmission there. Now, on my setup there again, every throwout bearing is a little different. This one has, let me get this adjusted here. This one has hydraulic lines going to it. So there's two lines, basically one on this side, one on this side. One is the bleed line, whichever is towards the top is going to be your air bleed that comes out, and the other one is your feed line. This one has to, these lines have to come out off to the side here, just so they can go out the bell housing. So if you have to turn it like this, now if you just made a measurement, that's going to be off because what you're doing is actually adjusting it. So when you spin it counterclockwise, it's going to come out. You spin it in, spin it clockwise, it's going to shorten that up a little bit. So just remember that wherever you set that, that could change your measurement a little bit. So, but I kind of had mine set up so it's facing out that way. Should come out right through this hole here. And both lines should come out that same spot. And my measurement should be good. So I'm going to get my lines installed here. And I believe everything else should be ready to go. Like I said, all my clearancing is done on the case itself in the tunnel. So I should be, once my lines are installed, I should be able to put that up in the car and get that bolted up, and it should be ready to stay in there. And then I can kind of move on to the pedal assembly and getting the hydraulic, the master cylinder and all that stuff, you know, get the shift lever back on it, and basically measure up for my drive shaft, get that on order. They don't send one with because you got to take your measurement first just in case it's off. So I'll have to get that up there soon, but just wanted to kind of go over that. If you have any questions, let me know. Shoot me a message there and I'll see if I can help, but basically just kind of read through the instructions. The stuff I had, beware that Silver Sport hasn't quite updated their stuff because they started using these McLeods, which kind of change up some of their instructions, and their instructions were a little confusing. So I actually had called them on it, and they kind of clarified what was going on here. But yeah, no spacer back here, no indexing pin. It's all self-adjusted, basically just by spinning it, and it just stays pretty solid there. So we'll see how that works. But once you apply pressure, obviously it's going to extend out and go back and forth. So I like the fact that I'm starting to see less and less parts on my bench here. This whole bench was full of parts that came with the kit, so we're for the most part down to wiring and the pedal here, but got the transmission stabbed in here. Hopefully should be for the last time. I'll show you here quick. We got our throwout bearing, should be figured out, and you can see here that I got my two lines coming out. I had to kind of figure out where the lines were going to end up. There's a few spots that kind of come out through this hole, through this big one here, most likely where a mechanical fork would be instead of a hydraulic throwout bearing. This one I can kind of squeeze it between here or here if I have to, but it's maybe a little hard to see, but I want to make sure that obviously there's room for the lines, because that bearing has to move forward and back. So just to make sure that there's nothing that's going to rub or the lines have enough play in them to move. I don't know how much travel there will actually be to disengage and engage the clutch, but this is how I'm going to do it. Top one here is the bleeder. Bottom one will be hooked up to the master cylinder. My exhaust obviously is going to come down through here. I think it's going to be out here more, and then kind of tuck in and go back, you know, kind of under the transmission cross member here. So I got to try and figure out how I can somewhat tuck this away so it's not near the exhaust, rubbing on that or getting hot. The bleeder here can be kind of tucked anywhere because you're only going to need that roughly once unless you have to, you know, take it apart. But this line, I think I can kind of point it forward and run it down here and either go, most likely go underneath the exhaust and up kind of where the steering column here would be. So we'll figure that out. Well, the exhaust will probably be one of the last things to go on underneath here. I got to measure I did measure my drive shaft here. I got to call and get that ordered. So I'll have to throw that in before I can get my exhaust up here. So these will just kind of have to wait for now. But other than that, like I said, this is stabbed in here. I do have the break-in oil in here. It's just Dextron 3 that came with it. They sent about 4 quarts of Dextron 3 break-in oil, and then they also sent 4 quarts of some Valvoline synchro mesh that'll go in here after the break-in period. So these are the factory wires here I'll have to wire up. This is for the speed sensor, which I got here. That's one that came out of the automatic transmission. We won't be using the mechanical part anymore because I have the Dakota Digitals in there, but this will have to be hooked up. So other than that, this is the reverse lights and the neutral park safety switch. So I'll have to figure out how that's going to be hooked up. Hopefully I don't have to cut this up too much. I might have another connector that would fit on here, or a harness or something that I could splice into versus cutting this. But let me grab my flashlight here. You can see this side. This is a little tight up in here. This is the reverse light switch on this side. There is room there. They're not rubbing anything, but this is a little harness I'll have to wire in for the reverse light. So that'll have to kind of run back. I don't really have room to go over the top, so I'll have to run it back here and then over somehow. Probably tie it to the cross member here or something. But then they have this solenoid here. I forget which solenoid this is here. I think that's the reverse lockout. And then this one here is a speed signal, basically like a speedometer sensor, the VSS, the vehicle speed sensor. That I believe will have to be wired into the control box that they have for the safety reverse lockout. So that'll have to be tied in basically with this somehow and be controlled. So when you cruise at 60, you can't just throw it into reverse. But other than that, it's looking pretty good. I got most of my bolts and everything tightened down. Other than putting that drive shaft in, getting that ordered and getting that, it's going to be just mainly wiring and exhaust down here. I'll show you, I do have the top side kind of tied up a little bit. Got the lower seal here, they call it, installed there, so the shifter lever sticking through. I do have my, I didn't show you that down there. This wire here is for my trans temp. So I had, excuse me, the trans temp gauge here for the automatic, and I thought, well, it'd be kind of nice to have that on the manual transmission too. So I got that running through here. I'll just go back down and show you real quick. But other than that, I got to put a little dynamat there on the hump kit. In hindsight, the hump kit, I would almost, if you're going to do this yourself, you know, I kind of put this on here, and then they tell you just to trace the opening of the transmit or of the opening on the hump kit, and just kind of go straight down. If you need to do any more, you trim as you need it there. In hindsight, I would make this hump kit removable, which this I could drill my rivets out and make it, removable, but something you could access. Almost cut that hole as big as you can, just to the edge of the inside of this hump kit, and then make this hump kit removable. So you can easily have plenty of room under there to access whatever you need to. And then you can take that hump kit off if you need to get at it. Otherwise, you have to just be able to take this shift lever out. I'd have to drop the transmission a little bit. So to be able to take this all the way off, I should have maybe just cut that hole as big as possible. But I kind of hate, cutting that floor up and not making it any worse. If you were ever to go back to an automatic, you'd have to fill that in again. So that's up to you. But yeah, I think if I was to redo it again now that it's painted, I don't want to do it, touch it anymore. But to go back and do it again, I think I would just cut this hole as big as possible. But I'll show you that. I was trying to find a place for the trans temp gauge. I wish they that Tremec would have done this or left this there, but I think some of their older units here, this is tapped for a drain, so you have the fill and the drain on the same side. I wish they would have left that there, because then I would have put the temp sensor there. But now their drain is on this side and the rear part of the case here. So I just put a bushing in there, and then the trans temp sender. So then all I have to do is, I could remove either one, I guess, to drain the oil, but just take the wire loose, take the bushing out, and drain it all out, put it back in. So That's easy enough. So I don't think I'm going to have issues with it getting hot, but it's just kind of nice to use that gauge that's in there. You know, what the heck, we might as well use it up. And then away, if I ever do have issues, something going on, I can tell, you know, how it's doing. So, but next I should be able to, I think I'm all wrapped up as far as the hump kit and the floor here and any modifications there. So I should be able to lay the carpet back down and get that figured out. And I think next we should be able to start tackling the pedal box there. Probably gonna have to take a bunch of that stuff out. And then somehow, I think the master cylinder is gonna sit in here. Kind of sit down in between here, between the engine and the brake booster, which, I don't know, is gonna kind of suck because it's a little tight there. I may have to redo a bunch of my wiring here because I go through this grommet here, and that grommet might be where I need to have that open for the master cylinder and for the rod that comes off the brake pedal. So I have to do some more reading on the instructions there, what's going to happen there. But if it does sit down in here, it's going to be kind of close to the headers there and the engine, and if it's going to be getting hot, I don't know. So we'll see. But I was kind of thinking that it was going to be over in this area, which is tight too. It's got a bunch of wiring that I kind of shoved over on this side too, just to hide a bunch of it. So we'll see how that works out. But I'll get the carpet back in, get that laid down, and I think we'll be able to kind of move on to the pedal box. So next step that I got to do here is I took the brake booster out of the way, basically disconnect the master cylinder, kind of pull it forward. Depending on what you all have hooked up here, I don't have the proportioning valve hooked up. If that's still hooked up to your master cylinder, you might have to take that bolt loose just so it can slide forward a little bit. Mine is no longer there, but I just kind of tweaked the lines forward a little bit. And then there's 4 bolts or 4 nuts on the back, on the inside of the firewall that hold the brake booster on there. I got to disconnect the vacuum line going to the brake booster. And there it is right there. But so it's pretty snug in there to get up there and get the 4 bolts or the nuts out of the way. See if I can get up in here, but the bottom 2 aren't so bad. Yeah, disconnect the pedal. You know, there's one. There's another one right there. And then there's the other 2. But depending on how much crap you got in your dash, it's hard to get at it just because it's kind of up in there at a sharp angle to go up and then in. A wrench, you can't really spin that much, so do what you can to get in there with a swivel or something like that, get them loose. Mine's been off before, so it's comes out pretty good, but so that's out. Next thing I'll have to do here is take the steering column loose, because the steering column's going to have to come out. So there's a bolt right here that holds the steering column to the outside linkage here. So I'll have to take that off or take that out, and that's where it's going to slide out. It's a good idea to mark that with a paint pen or something like that, just so it doesn't spin 180 on you or something like that, and then the steering's off. But so I got to do that, and then there's 4 bolts. This one here, that one, and then there's 2 up in here that'll have to come out to take the steering column down and then pull it out. There's going to be a bunch of wiring hooked to it too. You might be able to leave it hooked up depending on how much length you have there, but most likely you'll have to disconnect it. And it's just going to be easier just to probably pull it all out anyway, because this whole pedal box in this area, this framing, is going to have to come down because it's going to have to be modified. So I have plenty of wire hanging up inside here. So a lot of this is going to have to be pulled loose here, and hopefully it's not a nightmare, but we'll get into it here. We'll start taking the steering column out, and then hopefully we should have a lot more room to get in here and get at things. I wanted to show you this quick. So I got the steering column out now. That was a little bit of fighting with the wiring and everything and trying to hang on to it and trying to get that steering linkage slid out of here all at the same time. But it would help if you have a second person to help you get that out of there. But This is the cable I talked about earlier that I was hoping to get rid of if we didn't need it. Otherwise, I was going to just tuck it up in the dash somehow. It's kind of a, I don't want to say bulky, but it's a really stiff cable. And so in the dash, you're kind of fighting it if you're doing any wiring in there. But this cable here actually goes to the automatic shifter. So when the key is out, this won't allow you to shift into any gear. So this cable actually goes to the shifter lever, and as soon as you turn the key, it unlocks it so you can put it into park or reverse, drive, neutral, all that good stuff. So I will be able to remove it here. Basically, there's one wire connector right here too. I don't know if I'm going to have any issues with that or what that's actually doing. If that's more of a sensor, or if that actual activates this. I don't know. I don't think this is a solenoid in here. Maybe it is, but anyway, it's got this metal clip on here. Basically, it just clips on there. You kind of push it and it hooks around that opening there. You kind of swing it out of the way like that. That comes off. Then down here, this is just a bolt I was trying to get out earlier in the dash, but you can't do it unless you drop the steering column. So you take the bolt out here, and then basically this whole thing just pops right out of there. So there's a little, you can see a little slider in there, and here there's a little hook. So basically once it's in gear, if you have it in gear and drive or something like that, this little latch here won't allow you to turn the key all the way off. So that's what this cable is for. I don't need it anymore now. It's a manual, but we're going to hang on to it, throw it with the rest of the parts for the automatic, and just one last thing in the dash. Kind of throw it in our pile over here. But yeah, one last thing floating around in there and kind of cleans everything up. So we'll continue on. Just wanted to show you that. They send along this template. There's a few templates in the instruction manuals and stuff you'll need to use, but they send this along. This is for the pedal box itself, a little area that you have to cut out. So you cut out this template, and then you kind of cut out this crosshatch area. This is actually what will be removed on this template. And then you'll see, I'll show you here shortly, but there's a little square box here for an alignment. Basically, the best, they kind of show it as, they basically show it, with the pedal box out. Looking at this here, the pedal box is, man, it's crammed in there. That's a lot more work to get that framing out of there. So I'm going to try and do it in the vehicle. Should be able to do it, so I'll show you here. But if you look, this bolt here, this square hole here, right there is one of the bolts for the steering column. So you just have to take it out of there. There's this little metal clip that holds it in there. Take the bolt out, and then you start there, and that's the square peg or square hole that you line up, and then you kind of fold it around. And I'll try and get all these wires out of the way, but basically tape it onto the pedal box here, and then I'll draw that out, and then I'll have to cut that out of there. Basically, you can see the center part there is where it's going to have to be cut out. I have a bunch of wiring and stuff shoved up in here for the Dakota Digital gauge cluster, but that all pulls down, so I'll pull that out of there. I don't know what I'm going to use, if I'm going to use an air saw or a cutoff wheel or what, but somehow I'll get in here and have to cut that out. Looking at this, it somewhat looks like you can get the pedal box out of here, but it's just, there's, like right here, there's a crossbar that runs over to the side of the car that I don't know how I'd get that out of there without having to take almost all the dash apart. And so screw that. I'm going to try and do that with basically just cut it in here, and I think I should be able to have enough tools to get in there and cut that out decent, and die grinders and stuff. It's going to make a mess in here, but it's better than having to take all this dash apart. So now that the steering column is out of the way, you start getting into the nitty-gritty of the whole thing here. I do have that hole cut out there. That was a little bit of a pain with the pedal box in here, but you can get it done. I used what did I use? My air cutoff wheel on a small rotary tool. You could use an air cutoff tool too. Then I also used an air saw kind of to get in there if you can't get the, because with anything with the air hose, you're going to have this long, it's going to make it longer because the hose is attached to it, so you can't really bend it and get in there like you want to. So, but I got it done. Whatever you need to do. I mean, I suppose you could use a plasma cutter too, but just don't set the car on fire, you know. But anyway, I kind of started mocking up some stuff here. I got the brake pedal out of here. Here's the pedal itself. I'm going to have to actually cut this down a little bit so third pedal can fit in here, but this is a little tricky getting in and out of there. This bolt here goes up in between there, and there's not really a spot. This bolt has to slide towards the tunnel of the car, or towards the center of the car, and you slide it out so far, about 3/4 of the way, and then it hits brace under there. So you have to pull it, you know, get it about 3/4 of the way down, and then angle it a little bit, and then slide the bolt out the rest of the way. So it's pretty tight in there, but you can get it out. So I got that out. Like I said, we're gonna have to cut the pad down a little bit, and then I started mocking up this bracket here. You can see that's going to be for where the master cylinder gets mounted. So that's just a support on kind of a reinforcing plate on this side, and then the master cylinder gets mounted on the other side. This bolt here is an existing bolt. You can see the other ones here. There's one there. There's 4 here, but so you have 2 on this side, 2 on this side. You just take that one out, and then you put it in the hole that's already there, and you mount it back up there. So it's kind of a guide to where that plate needs to be mounted. And then this thing fits inside this rubber seal here. You know, this is for the steering column to go through. I don't know why it's so big, but basically you mount that up there, and then what you're gonna do is drill these 4 holes that they have in there all the way through, and then on the outside, that's where your master cylinder is going to be mounted, and then the push rod is going to come through here. Now it's kind of tight on this side. It didn't want to sit inside of this rubber real well. You were kind of fighting it the whole time, so I narrowed this side up a little bit so it sat in here better. I ground the outside here a little bit, and I ground the inside here just so it fit in there better. It's still plenty strong, plenty there to support it, but they could have redesigned that just slightly better to snug in there, but maybe yours is a little different. But it just wouldn't fit in there the way I wanted it to nice, so I kind of massaged it a little bit. They also say this is an 1.25 inch hole, I believe. They say to go ahead and take a hole saw to that. You don't, as far as I can tell, you don't need to go that big. You only need like a 5/16 hole basically in the center of that for the rod to come through. So I don't want to bore a big hole through there and don't need it, just to make it smaller. But so we'll have to figure that out here in a little bit. And it's a little bit all over the place under here. I started with that bracket, kind of going through the instructions and stuff, and then I kind of switched to the brake pedal. I was gonna cut this. The only reason it's I'm all over the place on this stuff is I'll give, let me set this down here. I'll give Silver Sport Transmissions a little criticism here, a little constructive criticism, but there's a bunch of different instruction manuals here that they send you. Like this one is just the pedal assembly for the Foxbody, automatic to manual. So this is almost somewhat just talks about the brake pedal and the clutch pedal here. But if you go to a different one, they also talk about it, like the hydraulic throwout bearing here. We'll get into the pedal a little bit too. And it talks about a cruise switch that I don't think I have in there. That's like this bracket here is for a cruise switch that supposedly is already existing, but if it already exists, that means it's probably a 3-pedal car anyway, or it's got a clutch in it. Mine just has this vacuum switch in there, and that's the only thing that connects the cruise. So I'll show you. This is just a little vacuum hose. I'm not sure where it comes off of. I would guess the T on the outside. But this is, all this does is when you depress the pedal or activates the switch, it just, there's vacuum stored in here, and then as soon as you push it, it releases the vacuum. So then your cruise control gets kicked off. But that's run by the brake pedal, and that sits up in that hole right here. So as soon as you tap the brakes, it releases it. It doesn't, they don't run off of the brake switch. I believe this is just for the brake lights. So it just runs this one switch, but I don't see any other cruise control switch in here. The car is equipped with cruise control, so I don't believe that applies to me. So it'd just be nice if they kind of organize their instructions a little bit better. You know, like for me, it'd be nice if all this was on one booklet or one book, and it was basically, okay, start here, you know, from A to B. First thing you do is remove the old transmission and just step by step kind of make you go through there, versus having kind of a 3 or 4 different books here. Now, I understand that these transmissions can fit in just about any car, so to keep track of every single car and every single setup that you would need to have an instruction manual for is tough. So they kind of have these broke down into certain vehicles and whatnot. But you just kind of have to take your time. If you got to call them, I'm sure they'll be more than willing to help you. But it is kind of confusing. It'd be nice if they did have, you know, start here, start there, and then just go through the steps. But so I don't know if I'm supposed to, you know, when I first started doing this, I'm like, well, let's get the old stuff out and then just kind of go from there, you know, most likely get the clutch set up and the transmission in and then figure everything else out. Well, maybe it would have been better to start with the pedal or something like that. But this is kind of my little rant, I guess, as far as it would have been nice to see that, but we're making it through here. So we'll get it figured out. So, but we're getting down there. A lot of these parts are disappearing off the bench, like I said before. What we'll do is I'll get this clutch or this brake pedal machine down. They send a new pedal pad with it. So you can see this is the old brake pad. That's the new one. So that's just going to go on there like that. So I got to cut off about that much. And they do have a template they got to cut out here. It's somewhere in the instructions here. I think it's that one right there. They have you cut that out and lay on the pad, and then you got to trim it. And then, so we'll get it figured out. Got the brake pedal cut down. I got a little paint put on it, so I'm letting that dry for now. If you kind of look, here's the clutch pedal. That's the same pad as what the brake pedal is going to have on it, but it's just going to be on the opposite side, so it's just reversed. But anyway, next up is we got to put in this bracket. This is a clutch pedal stop bracket. I'll kind of show you. Well, that's good. I just dropped my brake booster. No, it broke. It's bent. God damn it. Well, I have to straighten that out. It's a little confusing as far as in the instructions where this is supposed to go. But this is going to go, so there's one bolt that it attaches with, and this is, you know, when you think of the clutch pedal, you think of it on the left side. Well, everything's kind of mounted on the right side of the pedal box here, a passenger side, just because that's the way they have it engineered or the way it's made. I don't know if the factory ones are the same way or if they're on the left side, but either way, this bracket will go on the right side towards the center of the car. It's going to be mounted, let's see if I can show you here, up on the right side of the pedal box. And this hole here will get that 1/4-inch bolt, and there's a pre-existing hole up there. And then this hole here is actually where your brake pedal bolt will go through. So where your pedal bolt or your brake pedal bolt came out, this has got to go through there. So that bolt will go through here into the brake pedal and everything, and then that'll sit up underneath there. So it's actually going to be on the kind of down here on the right hand side, up way behind there. So, all right, call me dumb, I guess. I was trying to figure out how to get this clutch pedal linkage in here. This big rod over here. I was able to snake it in there, but to try and get that in there and get everything together, there was no possible way that it would have been able to get in there. So I started looking at again to get this pedal box out, and because I thought, you can see I got it loose, but this arm goes to the side of the dash, another one, and just the way it looked, I'm like, there's no way I would have had to get this bolt loose over on this side to get all that down. So I'm like, well, screw it, I'm just going to start to take it loose and just see what happens. And it did. It's still attached, but it swivels down a little bit. So I got the one bolt here, nut taken off there. There's another bolt that's in this hole here that comes down, and now I can kind of wiggle this whole thing loose. There's kind of a horse-shaped shoe thing right here. This bolt and this bolt go up and over this bar right here, part of the dash, and that's kind of welded or attached up there. So that's, looking at all that stuff, I thought there's no way this is coming down unless I tear off all the dash, but now that it's loose, this whole thing is coming out of here. So this is going to be way easier to do on the bench. So let me get it snaked out of here, and then we can take a good look at what it all looks like with it out. All right, this is the pedal box. This is what it looks like outside of the car. A little more easier to work on, obviously. And hopefully, I wish I would have kind of tried taking it loose to begin with, but this is what I was messing with, trying to get that in there, because this has to basically be mounted like that in there. This is a tube that goes through. This bracket here is slotted like that, and you can see there's grooves on each side. That's the way the instructions are still not 100% clear, but this is the way I understand it. This side has a bracket like this on it. You can see it's a little goofy on the one side here, and that's because it has to, let me get this turned here. That's where that bracket has to go. So there's a pre-existing hole here for this tube to go through, and you're going to reuse that black screw right there. That screw holds the brake pedal, or the kind of the release. This is where that cruise control switch is on mine. You just shove it in there, and then it notices if the brake was hit and disconnects or disengages the cruise control. So you're going to go through that hole there, through to the other side, and that's where all this is going to get bolted on. This will go through that, and I'll get it assembled here shortly. But yeah, these brackets, let me take this one off. That one just slides on the end there. So that'll sit like that. It just clears, it's pretty tight down in here, but that's kind of why it's real thin right there. So just got to make sure that's good to go. There's a self-tapping screw that has to go there that comes with. That would have been kind of a nightmare to get screwed in there inside the car. So this is going to go way quicker now that I actually tried pulling it out of there. But we'll get this installed. This one actually bolts up to that bolt there, and should go a lot easier. Let me show you that quick here. So I'll have to put that other bolt in there, the self-tapping screw into there. It just goes across. And there will be bushings that'll be put back in there too. And these are the bushings. One on each end. And the shaft is going to slide inside of all that. I don't know how this shaft is going to go in there though. It doesn't show a picture of it, if it's supposed to be up or down. We're going to have to try it out and see what happens. Is that what that, okay. That's how it's gonna go. All right, so the way it looks, this is how it's gonna go. Put the brake pedal down here. And the shaft, basically it's a, oops, now I'm leaning on it, but let's kind of turn it the right way here. So, as you step on the pedal, this would be resting, so no foot on the pedal. It's sitting there on that stop, and then as it comes up, it's going to catch this little arm right here, and that's what that little peg is sticking out there for. So that's going to catch. There's another bracket that goes on here that I believe is going to be the one operating the master cylinder. So I'll have to kind of test fit this, but I do have some wiring that's up in this area that may be contacted by this, or I may have to reroute just a little bit, which might be a pain in the ass, but we'll find out. And then you can see that the clutch pedal goes on, that's kind of the square pegged on there, and then it just gets tightened down. So that's how it should be sitting. We'll get the rest of the parts here and see if we can get this assembled. All right, next little thing I'm trying to deal with here is the clutch switch is supposed to mount in this area, and it attaches to this pin right here. There's two different brackets. One I'm not using. This is the other one. I don't really care how it attaches here. As far as I can tell, this bolt here goes right there, and then this top little hook here just hooks on top of this groove right here. So you just hook it back there, and then you attach it down here. Now, for the most part, if you got that bolt tight down at the bottom, it really shouldn't go anywhere. It'll wiggle forward and back a little bit, but I mean, there's nothing behind here that would keep it from being pushed in. If I don't know what would actually push it in or what would get up inside there once it's in the car, but you think there'd be a little bit better, something better, you know, even a spacer behind here or something to keep that from moving around a little bit. But I think it'll be okay. I may or may not put something behind here. I suppose you could always put a little tack weld there if you absolutely wanted to, but I think if you get this bottom bolt tight enough, it should be fine. So just get that nice and tight. And then the other thing with that, oops, let me grab my bolt here that fell on the floor, is once this bracket is in here, then I believe this, you know, see, they don't really show good pictures of this stuff in the instructions, but the switch here mounts like this, and then that little rod will go on that pin. But right now, the way I have it mocked up is this pin off of the switch lines directly up with the shaft here. Let me see if I can slide this around a little bit. Hold on. So the switch here should be on one side or the other of the clutch pedal. You know, it's supposed to go on the outside here on that pin. It could go on the inside if you wanted to, but I think it's supposed to go on the outside. And with this bracket on there, and that bolted down tight, it actually hits, get my finger out of the way, it hits the pedal dead on. So I'm going to have to space this one way or the other. Maybe this little black bushing here is on the wrong side, I'm not sure. I don't know, I think it would hit, I don't think it would get in there nice. Where I could go on the inside, I think it has to go on the outside. So I may have to just space this out a little bit, and then it won't hit the pedal. Now you could try and probably bend this pedal, the top of the pedal here a little bit, but that's pretty thick. That's at least 1/4 inch material there. And to try to get that little bit straightened out or something, you're going to have a pretty nice press or something, heat that up. And it's just going to be easier just to space this out if I have to. And I don't want to take this all back apart. So I think that's what I'll do. either that or I could space this bracket out maybe a little bit, but I think that's how it's going to go, is I'm just going to have to space it somehow. So I ended up just putting a couple small washers between that bracket and the bushing here. It seems to be all right. There's enough, I guess, play between this gray housing and that bushing where it can be slightly at an angle. Seems to be operating just fine now. I don't think it's going to bind or wreck. You know, if there's too much side load or something, it could wreck this switch. So try to make it as straight as possible, but I think it'll work all right. This bracket seems to be pretty solid here. What I ended up doing is bending the bracket so there's tension on it. So when you tighten the bolt down here, it's actually trying to pull it this way a little bit. So it holds it nice and tight. This could slide over time, move forward and back, but it's hopefully shouldn't affect the switch settings. But what you want to do now is once it's installed, then we got to adjust there's these little tabs here, like going one on each side of this down here on the switch itself. So one goes there and then they snap together, and you can set them just about anywhere you want. Mine came pretty far up when they were in the kit there. But what you want to do, so right now the clutch is all the way up, and that's where it's at. If you set this too tight, the clutch, when you depress it, it's going to bottom out the switch, and it's going to wreck the switch, and if not, break it right off of this bolt here. So you want to make sure that you have full travel of your clutch, you know, when it hits up here, that it's not bottoming out the switch. So this little plunger here is what actually activates the switch right there, not necessarily this arm here. So you got to set it in a place where when it's fully bottomed out here, the clutch pedal, that this switch is basically pushed in like there. So it's almost at the very end of the rod there. So you just got to make sure you get that set correctly. And we'll kind of get somewhere about there. And you just snap it together. And yeah, we should be good there. So you're almost fully depressing it all the way before it'll actually activate. So last part of this is going to be this bracket right here, this boomerang shaped bracket. It slides on the clutch pedal rod that goes through here, and that's what's going to basically attach to the master cylinder. I had to massage this a little bit too. I didn't quite have these big washers that come with it and these two little cotter pins on each one. The big washer here fit fine. It was a little tight. I had to massage back in here. Let's see if I can show you that. There's weld. So the rod gets welded to this bar here. So I had to massage the weld back in here so it slid on far enough so I could get the washer on and the cotter pin in. This one fit fine here, but I had to put a different washer on here because the washer is so big that it actually will hit this bracket here. And either it's going to stop it from coming all the way down, or it's going to try and bend this. You know, if the washer might slide off the side of the lower bracket down here, and it might put pressure on that cotter pin and eventually break it. I don't think it's going to necessarily come off in the car because there's nowhere for it to go. But basically it just slides on there, and you might have to do some massaging a little bit. I also massaged this bracket here because once you slide this boomerang shaped one on there, I ground down this just a little bit so both the inner and outer bars there hit at the same time. Because before this one here was actually holding it up a little bit in the center, and I just figured, well, let's just make them both sit flat so they hit at the same time. So, but I think that's how it's supposed to go. There again, I didn't see any instructions really on this piece here. You see little glimpses of this being attached to the master cylinder and stuff, but there's nothing in the instructions about how this is assembled. So I had to kind of figure that one out. but hopefully you can learn from me here. And I think everything else is sitting pretty good. Our switch is all set and adjusted. That should be good. Once it's, you can kind of see there's just a slight bit. For the most part, they're flush with each other, level. The clutch pedal is just slightly behind it, but that should be good there. We should be able to put this back in the vehicle, and we'll just have to attach the master cylinder linkage here. I was getting ready to throw this back in the car, and I thought, well, let's just make sure that my linkage here works. This is actual, whoops, now it's all falling apart in my hand here. So this is the rod that's going to attach to this pedal assembly here that goes to the master cylinder. That screws onto the master cylinder there. And where it's going to be, so we got the pedals. It's going to go through that cutout area on the pedal box itself like this. And then as you operate the clutch, it's going to move back and forth. That's why we had to cut that out. Turns out I'm going to have to grind a little bit more off there. You can kind of see where I have to take some of that out. For the most part, about 3/4 of the travel, it's fine, but that last little bit, it's going to hit right there. So it's going to bind on this cylinder here. So you don't want that. So double check that before you put it back in the car. Otherwise, you're going to have some issues there. All right, I've got the pedal box back installed here. So I turned my attention to the master cylinder, which you can see I've got mounted already. I drilled my holes through there. They're 5/16 bolt. It says to drill 3/8 hole, but I drilled 5/16 or slightly bigger, and they fit fine. It also wants you to drill out this rubber centerpiece here with an 1.25" hole saw. This rod is not that big, so I mean this rod is no bigger than a 5/16 bolt, and or 3/8. So you don't need to drill a big hole there. So I kind of drilled a centering hole, and then I kind of split it like a plus or positive sign. Just so it moves, so it basically seals up along that rod. Once you have the master cylinder installed, nothing's coming through this hole anyway, so even if you did cut it that big, nothing's going to get in there, but I just figured if I ever want to pull that out, it'll somewhat seal back up again, so you don't have to go that big, and it'll move just fine in there. So I'll show you out here. Oops, light's shining in there. Let me see. Let me grab this, take that off. So the 4 bolts come through there. You got to tighten them up. And then the master cylinder basically sits in there. I got kind of lucked out where my wiring there's nothing affecting the wiring. You know what? I'm going to grab that light. It's almost dead too, so. So there you go, the 4 bolts. And I don't like how close it is to the manifold, exhaust manifold. I mean, there's some space there, but I don't like how the heat is going to be right there. So I may make a little heat shield between there and somehow mount it to the master cylinder, but we'll see what happens. I also got to try and figure out where I'm going to mount my lines. I think if I can get this to stay somehow. Okay, it's not going to stay for me. I think I'm going to have, this is the high pressure line going to the bell housing. So I think I'm going to angle it over towards the frame rail here and kind of go down. You can see my O2 sensor wiring right there. So I'll kind of angle it so it loops forward and then back down underneath the exhaust and the steering column and everything. And I think that's going to work out good there. And then as far as, this is the feed line that comes from the reservoir, and that's just a low pressure line. I'll mount it up in this area somewhere. I don't know, my alarm horn here is in the way. I may move this and mount it here somehow. I want to put this back in place and see if I can mount it right here somewhere. Maybe I can mount it, in between or something. I'm not quite sure where I'm mounting it, but I may have to kind of mock it up, put the brake booster back in here. But with the brake booster in here, it's it's tight to get in here. So, you know, hooking the lines up now might be the best way, and then just leave them dangling or something. I don't know. But we'll have to figure that out. Otherwise, the other issue I ran into is I hooked up my linkage. See if we can see this. So there's my linkage there. That's tied in. I screwed the hex part there, the shaft hex part, all the way into the master cylinder as far as I can go. And then, or sorry, I did it the opposite way. I brought it towards this end as far as I could go. And I actually took, you can see, I took that hex shaft and I ground it down so it was round, because it's tight up against my bracket, my pedal box. So I had to do some more grinding up behind the pedal box there, just because this hex is pretty thick. I had room before on the bench when I was messing with it. You know, the spacer there worked fine, but I wasn't sure what angle this was going to come at. If it was pointed down further, I'd have no issues, but being it's kind of almost not horizontal but straight back, it goes up into the pedal box more. So I had to do some more grinding. It's getting pretty thin on the back side there, but grinding this down right there helped a lot. But the jam nut too is pretty thick, so you kind of have to have the, I don't know what other type of nut I could have on there that would be thin. So that's why I moved it as close to this spherical rod end as I could, and then just ground that down so the nut never gets to that. So if I don't know if we'll be able to see on camera here, but so right now the pedal is bottoming out on the carpet and the floor basically, and the jam nut is just free where it doesn't hit the pedal box frame. So having that ground down and grinding down some of that other stuff, I got play there now. The big thing is I could have spaced it out to the left more and got more room, but sorry about that. You could space this out further to the left and have more room, and you would have probably no issues with that colliding or hitting the pedal box frame. But once you mount the master cylinder here, you don't want to have this rod cocked at an angle or anything up down. You want it pretty much neutral and centered. So otherwise, if it's cocked to one side, you're going to be kind of jamming that piston in the master cylinder awkwardly or off to the side. It even says in the instructions, you know, have that as straight as possible. So I'm trying to keep this and just let this predict or dictate which way this rod is going to move, you know, left, right, up, down. I just kind of let it sit right in neutral in the middle. And so I had to kind of shorten up this spacer, and this rod is kind of moved over. It should even be just a hair more in, but I'm kind of compromising just a little bit. And so it's pretty straight right now, but it is just slightly to the left, and it's going to work. It's just that you might have to mess with it a little bit. I didn't know how else to necessarily get that to centered. I could, if I move the master cylinder maybe one way or the other a little bit, but you can't, once you drill the holes, you don't have a whole lot of room to move it around. And you want this plate here to be sitting inside here. I mean, you can really drill it to wherever you want, but that's where I figured it was supposed to be. So you might have to mess with this a little bit as you go along. So just take your time, make sure everything's clearing. As far as the linkage up on top and on the other side, the pedal, the pedal switch and all the linkage up in here seems to be plenty of room. That's not rubbing on anything. I will have to try and get this wiring harness. You can see it just rubs a little bit on those wires there. You can see the red. That bare wire is not from the pedal rubbing, but that's where it just hits a little bit. So I'm gonna have to tie that to the left just a little bit or try and push it off. That's a big heavy harness there, so I might have to somehow tie it to the side, but otherwise it's gonna sit there and rub on those wires. So other than that, it's looking pretty good in here. Just about ready to finalize that linkage there, and we can hook up the lines and kind of start putting the steering column back in place, the brake booster and all that stuff. So we're wrapping it up. We're getting closer to the end anyway. Just doing some test fitting here of the brake booster, trying to figure out where to mount my reservoir tank and how to run my lines from the master cylinder. And basically realized I got a little issue here. This is a gasket that's off the back of the brake booster. And as you can see right there, the brake booster is going to make contact with that master cylinder brace. It's not a huge issue, I guess, but it does bring that master cylinder off the firewall maybe 1/8 of an inch or so, 3/16, which I don't like because that brake booster is not going to sit flush on the firewall. So it's going to be a little bit towards the fender, or sit towards the fender. I'm sure if you bolted everything down tight, it'll draw everything together, but I still think it's going to be a little bit crooked. And this, you know, the master cylinder here for the brakes isn't exactly a lot of room here between the upright here, the shock tower. So trying to figure out what I want to do here. You can see I got the gasket that goes between there, kind of to tell where I'm going to either cut there, or, you know, I suppose I could make a spacer to space it out a little bit to take up that gap that's going to be behind there. That's going to take more time than anything. I don't really want to pull that master cylinder back out, but I might do that. Basically, it's just catching this corner right here of the brake booster, just enough where it's not sitting totally flush there. So, you know, like I said, it can sit crooked and stuff. You'd have that gap there unless you had a pretty thick gasket or something to make it to fill in there. Otherwise, you can get, I don't know, noise or a draft or something, you know, smell through that little gap into the inside there. So I think my best bet is just to trim this bracket away. This bracket is plenty heavy duty. So I'll probably end up just having to pull that back apart and pull that out, cut out what I need to, and then that brake booster should hopefully be able to sit in there. But I mean, it basically just misses the bolts here, and so it'll be kind of close, but I think I can trim that enough where I can get it to sit in there decent. So we'll pull that back. Okay, master cylinder is mounted back in here, getting ready to throw that brake booster in for the last time. Everything's clearing now after clearing that right there. I got my two lines hooked up. You can kind of see I got the high pressure line run towards the K-member, or the frame rail basically. The low pressure line comes from the reservoir, just kind of runs down along the shock tower there and up. That should be fine. We'll see if this has any issues with the heat coming off the headers or not. You can also see, maybe, I built a little heat shield kind of around the master cylinder. See if I can get in there a little bit better. So nothing fancy, just figured I'd whip something up quick just to kind of help protect it somewhat. Had some metal laying around, so I whipped it up, put a little hose clamp on there to kind of hold it, and hopefully that should help. But get that brake booster put in here, and I should be able to mount the brake master cylinder and then also get into the interior and start wrapping that up. I don't know that there's much. Oh, I do have to hook up the steering. We'll do that once we throw the steering column back in. I can do that kind of from the bottom, but it's looking good on this end. All right, little update on the car here is I got most of this stuff back together now. I got the brake booster in, master cylinder, brake master cylinder is hooked up or mounted back up. My lines, I should have them for the most part finalized running down here, or where I'm going to run them. I do need to get a heat shield or heat sleeve for the high pressure line. You can kind of see I got one on the, I just happened to find one in my junk pile, I guess, for the rubber hose there. I want to protect that against the heat there from the headers. But I do want to find one for the high pressure line there. I do have it, you can kind of see it down there. It runs underneath the steering shaft. I do have to hook that steering shaft back up just because I kind of wanted to put the steering column right there sitting on the box, steering column in first. But because this bolt here is a lot easier to get to with that brake booster out of the way. But the only problem with that is if I install the brake booster or the steering column first, then the brake booster bolts are a pain in the butt to get to. I'll show you that real quick here. Let me hang this up. So these ones might not be so bad. That one there, the bottom two, even this upper right one there isn't so bad. But the steering column would run right through here. So it's just easier to do these with the steering column out. Now the bolt out there for the steering column, I can get that from underneath. It's a little bit of a pain, but this is more of a pain if that steering column was in the way. The one upper left one is kind of a nightmare. There's not much room to get at it. I thought maybe I could use a long extension and go through kind of the wiring and the upper part of the dash here and get at it, but the clutch switch is right in the way. The little bracket that's holds the clutch switch is right in the way, and even underneath here, the clutch switch is in the way. What I ended up doing was using a 12-point boxed end wrench, basically a combination wrench, and just point at a time, turning it little at a time, and finally got it tight. These other ones are, like I said, really easy, but that other one is a real pain in the butt to get up in there. So figured that would be much better than having the steering column in the way and get that done. But so just be aware of it. I'll show you here in a second, but I ended up bleeding the brakes or the clutch pedal to here too, and the clutch system. I ended up just jamming a tool in between here, the rod end, and this pedal box, just so I could, because I don't have someone to help me do this today. So, but that's how I ended up holding the brake or the clutch pedal down to bleed the system. But I did get it bled. It's kind of a pain. There's a bunch of different ways you can kind of bleed the system. I ended up having to, like your brakes, if you have someone pump the brakes for you, and then they hold it down, and then you crack the bleeder screw open, and then when you're done, then they let it up and pump it a few times. That's how I ended up doing with the clutch system, but I just didn't have someone to help me. So, first thing I did was I just gravity fed the reservoir here, and went down there, cracked the bleeder screw open, and it drained out pretty quick, or it came down there pretty quick. I thought it'd take a little bit of time to get the air out of the system, but it went down, but it was pretty easy to move the clutch pedal. And you can actually kind of, have one hand on the clutch pedal here and look underneath and look in the bell housing and see if the throw bearing is actually moving. And I wasn't getting any movement. You'd see it wiggle just a little bit, but not enough to move the fingers on the clutch. So what I ended up doing is trying the hand pump, the vacuum pump here. I tried it down below on the bleeder, trying to draw the air out down at the bottom. Wasn't having a whole lot of luck there. They also say you could there's a little tiny nipple on here, right there, which you can hook a vacuum line to and try and suck the air up. You do have to take this rubber diaphragm out of there underneath the cap. So this just goes in the reservoir like this, and then you put the cap on top of it. Well, if this is in there, it's not going to do you any good to try and use that little port right there. So you have to take this out. So I tried the vacuum pump on here, but with this words or lettering written on here, you can't get a nice tight seal around here to do that. So I tried it a little bit, but it didn't really work for me. So like I said, the best way that ended up working for me is just pumping the pedal and then going down, cracking the bleeder screw. But this is how I did it down here. They do tell you in the instructions, that you should take and put this bleeder in a tub or a reservoir like this, and submerge it, and then crack it open, and then pump the pedal a bunch, and then tighten it up like you would. That way there's no basically there's no air being sucked back in when you pump it. The only problem with that is you kind of need a big enough reservoir with a lot of fluid in it just to be able to get your hands in there to open and loosen that, tighten that up and loosen that up when you need to crack it. And that's just a pain in the butt, and the hose isn't long enough here. So I took a clear line ran it down into a reservoir, a little cup here filled with the fluid. It's just .4 brake fluid. And that way I would crack it up here, but all the air bubbles would come out in here. And if any of it went back in, it would suck up fluid. So you're not constantly just fighting air bubbles moving back and forth. It did take me a while to do it this way, but I did end up making it work for me. So it seems to be working great. Like I said, you can kind of open this back up. You can see in there between the red throw bearing on the right there, and then you see the metal bearing in between, and then the red clutch on the left. You can see that when you move this, that bearing in there will actually move left and right, you know, and press on the fingers of the clutch. So it's nice that the opening here is big enough to look through, and you can kind of see if that's moving or not on you. Right now I'm getting about 3/8 of an inch of travel or so, maybe 3/8, maybe a 1/2 inch or so. So it appears to be working. And I wasn't 100% sure if I was getting enough travel. So one little test I did is, if you look through the bell housing, when you have the pedal pushed down, you can see if the disc, clutch disc is actually spinning, or if you can spin it. So I ended up putting the transmission in gear. I just put it in first gear. And then I found a bolt that screws into the back of the output shaft here. You just can't get your fingers on the output shaft to spin it. So there's threads in it, so I just took a bolt in there. So if I spin this while it's in gear and then press the clutch pedal down, I can look up in here and see that clutch disc spinning. And it doesn't sound, you know, it doesn't sound like it's dragging. So it seems to be working great, and I should be getting enough travel on that throw-out bearing that it's working. And then also too, if you let the clutch out, this should lock up. You shouldn't be able to turn it, so it should be engaged. So everything seems to be testing out okay. I think I got all of my air out of the system. Clutch is releasing like it should. So I think we can kind of put a lot of this stuff away here. I am waiting for a drive shaft yet. But for the most part, I think we can put the steering column in and start wrapping up some of the dash in there, and kind of keep moving on with the process. Before I start putting the interior back together, I'm going to try and get this control box mounted. This is for the reverse lockout. So when you're driving at high speeds, I think anything above 5 miles per hour or 0 to 10 roughly, this should lock it out of reverse, because reverse is up and to the right. That would be next to 5th gear, sorry. And you don't want to accidentally put it in reverse. So you got to hook this up. And this should be all the wiring I need to do to it. What I plan on doing is mounting this underneath the center console here, kind of in this area. Just kind of either stuff it in here or just run a little bracket or zip ties or something. And then it's got about roughly 6 feet of wire on it. And we have power and ground that we need to hook up. And then there's 2 wires for the solenoid to activate that lockout. And then the other 2 go to the speed sensor that's on the transmission. So it shouldn't be too hard to actually wire this up. It should be fairly easy, but what I want to do is actually there's the factory wiring harness that runs underneath the tunnel here, kind of comes down here, and I'll show you here in a second, but comes along here underneath the seat, and then kind of comes up to these other wires here and then over. But about right here is where it goes out, and there's a rubber grommet right there, and you have the reverse and the neutral safety lockout that's on the automatic. Some of this wiring is going to be a little bit different depending on if your car has the automatic or at one point was a manual transmission. So pay attention to wiring schematics, but for the most part they're both there. Both of the wires are there. The colors of the wires might be different, but let me see if I can put this under here. Get that down there. So you can see that wiring right there. I'm just going to drill a small hole through that rubber grommet and then run my wires through there. So 4 wires will go through there. The power and ground will stay up here somewhere. I'll find it in the dash, and so I'll have to run 4 through there. I'm just holding my light up here. Sorry about that. Come on. So I'll have to run 4 of these wires through there, through that rubber grommet, which I'll just make a little harness that kind of runs up along here. Just protect that. That shouldn't be out of the way. And then once I go through there, then I can wire it up underneath. But like I said, power and ground can stay up in the interior, and then the rest of them go out. And then I do need to wire up for the reverse lights. And I don't know if I have, maybe that's under here. Okay, yeah, I do have it under here. All right. So this would be the, let me start here. What's nice about this transmission is they send a speed sensor with the transmission, which is on the passenger side. I also have the mechanical speedometer sensor that I had in the AOD. Well, these also come with electronic signal on there too. So what this one right here is that wiring, factory wiring. That's going to be plugged in there, and that's only going to run my Dakota Digital gauge cluster, my speedometer. So depending on your application, you may or may not be using this, or you may or may not have to tap into these wires. If for some reason you're using some sort of speedometer converter box, you may need to tie into this or this one here. So read the instructions clearly, but as far as I was told, this one here that comes with the transmission will go directly to, you know, these 2 wires here. Doesn't matter which ones get hooked up to which ones, but both of these go to the 2 vehicle speed signal wires that are in the interior. So that'll go direct to them. This will get plugged into here. Also be aware that I don't have, a lot of times these will go back to your ECM. Mine, I do no longer have the factory ECM in there. I have a Holley Terminator X. So depending on what system you're running to, that could affect some of this stuff if it has power or going to read or anything. But for me, this one will plug right in here, and that should work for my speedometer. And then this one's just going to run, just send the signal to the lockout module there, just keep it from going into reverse at high speed. Here you can see the solenoid, the reverse lockout solenoid. So that'll have to be wired to those wires on the inside. Here is the other factory wiring connector. Let's see, I think the black and purple and the pink and orange here wire for me are for my reverse lights. So that would be your, anytime you're in reverse, the lights will come on. So I got to wire those 2. The other 2, the red and the white here, are going to be for the neutral safety lockout. Now, that's if you have an automatic. On a stick shift car, this is, I think, actually looped. You can see I have mine looped here. So it's just basically, instead of the switch being here on the transmission for the neutral safety, it's going to be on the clutch pedal. So now the clutch pedal is actually doing what this used to do. So this is just looped here. From before, this was the switch, and then it was looped up by the clutch pedal. So it just kind of switches position. So I got that. These 2 will go to the reverse light switch, which is up here on the passenger side. So these 2 wires here, I'll have to get wired to that. I was lucky enough that I had some Ford wiring harnesses laying around, so I was able to get this black connector here that matches up, so I don't have to splice into these wires. So it just plugs right in. So if for some reason anyone who ever wants to go back to an automatic in this car, don't have to rewire this. It'll be plugged right in. So that's kind of nice. So not too hard. We'll get these hooked to the reverse lights. This will plug into this sensor. And then these other 4 wires here, these 2 and these 2 go to the inside module. And that should be about it. So shouldn't be too difficult. We'll get that wired up here quick. And we should be getting close to testing this thing. I should have all my wiring finished up here. You can see I got the lockout control module or box right here mounted. There was just a small rivet right here that I kind of drilled out, and I just ran a screw right there. That should clear the center console. The center console will sit right on top of that, but that should be room there. And then my switches and my mirror adjustments, or my mirror switch, would be right in front of it, so there should be room for all that to be mounted right there. But I just have the harness from here kind of run down through here, where there's another grommet right here where the factory wiring ran through. So I ran the rest of the wires out. I have it grounded right kind of here to the parking brake handle, and then I just found power up in the dash here to supply power for this. But as far as on the inside here, we should be buttoned up with the wiring. And down here, I basically made a small little harness for the transmission, so I should be able to unplug it when I remove the transmission if I have to. But we have the reverse switch up front there. That gets plugged into the original wiring right here. I think I mentioned that I had an old harness that I robbed this connector off of, so I didn't have to cut and splice the factory connector. I was able just to use the black part here and then wire into it. And then so I can unplug that, and it would, if I ever wanted to put an automatic back in there, it would plug right into that. Otherwise, I have my speed sensor here that kind of runs down here with the rest of it and goes to this other weather pack connector. And also the solenoid is plugged into that weather pack connector. So there's the 4 wires that would come off the lockout control module inside, go to this right here. And then on this side is kind of where I came through and drilled that hole, and then just ran the harness out. So for my application, the positive and the negative wires that come from the box inside, it doesn't matter, because that's the only wires that are going to this. It's not tied into anything else. It's a 2-wire. So it doesn't matter if, which colored wire goes to which colored solenoid wire off the box. You can mix and match, but I just mixed the green with the green and then the pink with the brown, I believe. And then as far as the speed sensor, you have the purple and the yellow. That one too, because I don't have it tied into anything else, all I had to do was tie into the 2 wires that are the vehicle speed signal off the box. There's a yellow, and I forget what the other color is. Yellow and blue or something. And so I just put the yellow to yellow and the purple to the blue, and then I'll tie that into this connector here. So underneath here, we should be wired, basically buttoned up with the wiring. This green one here is my temp sender down here. Otherwise, kind of waiting on the drive shaft that's supposed to be here in a couple days. And I think I can start putting the interior back together. And down here we should be buttoned up. We'll have to try it once we get everything back together, but all right, didn't realize the battery went dead on the camera there, so I'm not sure how much the interior you saw there being put back together, but either way, interior is back together. We're just waiting on the drive shaft to show up. I think that's showing up tomorrow, and should be able to test that. So loved how it all turned out here, and just a matter of getting it on the road and trying it out. So we'll get that. All right, new day, new problem here. The exhaust basically is the last thing that's got to go in here. I did get the drive shaft the other day, and that's installed. That looks great. That fit great. Now I just got to get the exhaust in there. But the exhaust is going to hit. Because the transmission is longer, the tranny cross member hits back here. There's a kind of the square pad where it mounts the transmission bushing and mount. The back 2 corners hit kind of back in here. I don't know if this is going to be able to go up around that cross member or if I'm going to be just below it or something like that. But either way, I want to try and move this back a little bit, the X pipe here. And I had all this header wrap on there, and so I had to take all that off. What I'm going to try and do is take these clamps loose, see if I can slide them apart. I needed roughly about an inch to move it back a little bit. So that's what I'm going to try and do. If I need an inch, maybe go 2 inches or something, I'm going to try that. I'll try and slide these apart. I'll probably end up getting rid of these all together and just weld it on there. We'll see how that goes. But we'll move everything back. And if I have to cut a little bit off the end here to go into the muffler, so be it. But I think for now, I'm going to just try and slide everything back and see if I can gain my clearance there. I'll probably cut some of these. This was the hanger that was on there. That was hitting the cross member, so I had to cut that off quick. And we're still hitting there, but I might just cut that off altogether and just get it out of there. And maybe I'll shave that down too. That's for emissions. This was a full Flowmaster kit that I had gotten years ago. So I think it was Cat Thunder. I don't know. There was some name to it, but it's full 3-inch all the way back. So we'll see if we can't do that and get this thing fired up. All right, moment of truth. Let's see if this thing fires up. See if we hear any noises. See if I actually put this thing together correctly. Got the exhaust back up and everything. O2 sensors are all plugged in, so we should be able to fire it up and just see how this thing works. Actually, first want to make sure, I'm going to try and crank it without the clutch pedal in, just to see if that switch is working correctly. Yep, nothing good. We'll see this. Okay. I don't know if it just hasn't been running long and I don't know what the heck that's about. The thing just decided to go off on me and rev all over the place. What's that about? Got a bad O2 sensor or something? That's weird. Well, let's check for leaks. All right, not quite sure why this thing decided to rev all over the place on me there for a little bit. I did go in and adjust the tune a little bit, the IAC, the idle air control, and I also lowered the RPM for the idle. One thing too is I noticed the blower belt came off on me for some reason, so I don't know, sometimes when the thing is trying to start, and, you know, if there's not fuel there and it's sputtering a little bit, sometimes it'll kick the belt off. It's just part of the alignment on this thing. But anyway, I think that with those tuning adjustments, that seemed to help. So check for leaks. Don't see any leaks down there. I think all my wiring is working. The reverse lockout solenoid seems to be working. Reverse lights are coming on. You saw that the clutch switch won't let you start it unless you have the clutch pushed in. So that's all good. So yeah, gonna get this thing on the road pretty soon. I got one more thing I want to do to it before I get it on the road. That'll probably be coming up in the next video here. But we'll get this thing down eventually, get it on the road, do a little road test, and see how it works. But I think so far, everything seems to be going good. Apparently I did something right. So until next time, guys, we'll see you later.